This is Mike Dell. I am the VP of Customer Relations at Blubrry, and today we're going to install, configure WordPress and PowerPress. Well, actually, WordPress should be already installed, or if you're using one of Blubrry's websites, PowerPress will already be installed. But if, like this one, is a very blank website, you can see there's hardly anything there. And I signed into my WordPress backend. Again, if you're using a site that Blubrry hosts, one of our PowerPress sites, PowerPress will already be installed, so you can skip this step. But so the first thing you want to do is install PowerPress, and it's pretty straightforward these days. Go to plugins and click Add New, and up here in the search, type PowerPress. And this one with the fancy P logo is the one you want to install. This is an add-on for multi-site, which at this point is not needed anymore, but it's still in the repository. But install now. And within a minute or so, or less, sometimes quicker, sometimes not so quick. Depends on your internet connection, I guess. And it's ready to activate. So you just click Activate. You'll see it shows up here, shaded in blue with a line on it, and also a new menu down here, PowerPress. Now, if you have more stuff on your site, that's going to scroll all the way down. It's going to be towards the bottom of the stack here on the sidebar. So your mileage may vary. So first thing is we're going to go to PowerPress and settings. Now, actually, you're going to end up on getting started, probably, if it's the first time you've installed PowerPress. So it's going to ask you, have you started a podcast, or do you already have an RSS feed? If no, you hit no. If yes, then it'll show you how to import it. We're not going to cover that right now. So let's assume it's a new show. So we're going to hit no. And we're going to see that the podcast title it has here is underwaterbasketweaving.net, which is my website's address. But I don't want it to be that. I want it to be Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast. So that's where I put that. And then you want to put a description in. That one's very important because some directories will not take it if it doesn't have a description. So it just doesn't have to be huge, but definitely have something in that box. Category, this is for, this one I think is for Blubrry. Sure. But anyway, it's going to be education and how-to. And does it have explicit content? No. And my email address, well, that is one of them, but the one I get paid to listen or to answer is Blubrry, LUBRRY.com. I have a hard time typing Blubrry with the E's, by the way, since I've been doing this so long. You can, if you want, upload your artwork here, but I'll show you a better way to do it. But we'll go ahead and do it here. Why not? And it's going to be in my webinar folder, my 5 minutes worth of Photoshop expertise. Go here, and there you see a preview of it. And then you're good to go. So hit continue. Now, if you have already signed up for hosting, then you just hit skip, or you're not going to use hosting because you can use PowerPress without hosting. So don't worry about that, but hit skip. Or if you want to do a free hosting trial, you can hit that and we'll give you 30 days for free to try out our hosting. But I'm going to skip it because I already have my hosting set up. And since I already have hosting, I don't need stats. So hit skip and skip and go to settings. So that's what the settings panel is going to look like initially. Sorry, I had to hit the cough button. Edit point. Anyway, so this is what you're going to see when you first get into PowerPress and settings. So if you've already signed up for something over at Blubrry, make sure you're logged into Blubrry. So I'm going to go back to the dashboard. So it'll look like this when you're signed in. And I already signed up for hosting with this one. So make sure you're logged in here, then go back to your other tab and hit Let's Connect. And it's going to ask you to grant access to Blubrry. Then you select your show. Dang, got a frog in my throat. Anyway, you're going to see this connected to Blubrry. That means that you're all set to go with your hosting plan. Now, if you don't have hosting, or you're not going to use our free stats, there's no need to do the login like I just did. You can just use PowerPress for free, and wherever you host, it's fine. So we're in settings. We're going to go to feeds. Now, the whole idea of podcasting is driven by an RSS feed. Right here, it says your podcast RSS feed is, and it's going to be your domain /feed/podcast/. Okay, that feed is not active yet. As you can see down here, there's a warning that says you must create at least one episode for your feed to be valid. So keep that in mind. Also, if you have blog posts that are not podcasts, then this feed will not have those in it. It'll only have the ones that you have podcast episodes attached to it. So, blogging and podcasting are exactly the same thing. So that's why we do it that way. All right. So first thing we want to do is in this first menu item, we're going to go down this menu item in feeds and enhance all feeds. I'd leave it there. There are reasons to use these other ones, which most people don't have anymore. So enhance all feeds is good. Again, you can see there's a warning there because we haven't created an episode, which we will do in a little bit. And I always like to check this box. Do not allow other plugins to modify podcast feeds. There seems to be a lot of plugins out there that really know nothing about RSS feeds or podcasting in general. So you can have a conflict. This just helps to not let that happen. Accelerate feed, of course, faster is better, usually. Suppressed unused item tags. This is if you want to suppress all the extra stuff that that we have in here for Apple. You can. I'd leave it unchecked. Feed discovery, that helps you get found in search engines such as Google and Google Podcasts. One, because Google Podcasts is search based. Microsoft Bing, I believe, uses that for whatever directory Microsoft has. So turn that one on. RSS2 image. I used to have you turn this on, but there's a bit of a bug. It's not a bug in PowerPress. It's just a bug on the internet that if you have that turned on, it puts your fave icon, which in this case is a little WordPress logo, but you can always change that in the appearance and customize tab. You can put a little logo up there in the fave icon, but it'll put that in the feed if you leave this on. It doesn't hurt anything to leave it off, so leave it off. If you'd like to have emojis in your feed, I don't know why you would, but that is an option. You can turn that on. Hit save changes. You're going to get tired of me saying save changes, but you should do that on every one of these settings pages. Believe me, this doesn't take as long as I'm going to take to show it to you because I'm explaining everything. But you can always go back through this video and follow along. So feed settings. You see, we already set the show title, Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast, rather than the website name. Feed description, we put that in as well. Now, of course, if you ever need to change your title, this is where you do it. If you ever need to change the description, this is where you do it. And you can do this at any time. It's no big deal. It'll take a little while for the syndication points like Apple and Google and Spotify and Stitcher and all those to get the change, because podcasting is a pull technology. So what you do in your RSS feed gets pulled into all these places. Currently, there's no push. We're working on it. Feed landing page URL. If for some reason you want it to land somewhere other than your homepage on this website, you can put that address in here. I don't do that myself because I'm building a podcast website and I want the users to land on my blog roll, which will have all of my episodes showing, some players and whatnot. Podcast mirror feed URL. There should be a huge warning here. Do not put anything in this box unless you choose to use Podcast Mirror, which is another service of Blubrry, and it's free. But if you don't have a need for it, and it's a feed caching thing. So if you get really, really, really popular and your website's bogging down because too many people are hitting your feed all the time, you can farm that out to us and we'll take care of it. Otherwise, leave this blank. Anything you put in here will redirect your feed to whatever you put in here. And you don't want a web page or anything else or something that's not a feed to have your feed redirected to. Show most recent. This used to be, and it's kind of backed off now. It used to be the #1 support request we'd get at Blubrry. And what it is somebody will say, well, I just published episode 11 and episode 1 dropped off of Apple and Google and Stitcher and TuneIn and all this. That's because if you see right here, your feed site default is 10. On most WordPress sites, that is the case. So what I always tell people to do is just type in 300. Or on one of the shows we do is a weekly and it's topical, so people don't generally go back and listen to the old episodes. So then I put 52. That way it's just got the last year in the feed. Now, all the episodes are available on the website, as long as you have the website. So all those can be listened to. It's just not going to show up in Apple and all those other things, even if you go over the 300. It says maximum 300. That used to be the maximum that Apple would show, but now they've kind of relaxed that. So you could use a bigger number, but 300 is a practical maximum because the feed will get too large and slow and all that stuff. But you can experiment with that if you have more than 300 episodes. Feed lock. This is to prevent some podcast companies from importing your podcast, without your knowledge. There was a few Anchor podcasts and a few other freebie sites where people would just import somebody else's podcast, and then you have a duplicate show out there that you don't control. So this lock helps. You put your email address in the lock and turn it on. And if you do want to move to a different platform or whatever, you just hit no and save your changes and you'll be able to migrate into the new platform. Feed episode maximizer. This helps you if you do 300 episodes. It makes the feed a little bit faster and smaller because it takes out some of the unnecessary things on older episodes. At least that what goes into the feed. It doesn't take out anything from your website. So again, all the episodes are on your website. Just this is what gets syndicated out to the rest of the world. Copyright. You can, if you want, put a copyright in here. You don't have to. It's totally optional. And if you want to use that little copyright symbol, if you're on a Mac, you hold down the Option key and hit G, and that gives you a little copyright symbol. Otherwise, on Windows, you got to hold down the Alt and then hit +0169, and sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. What I like to do is go copy and paste it from the web somewhere. If you see that, you just copy it and you can paste it in there. That's the cheating way to do it. Caching debug comments. I would leave that off unless you contact support and support tells you to turn it on for testing, but leave it off otherwise. Even if you have super cache or W3 total cache, it can cause issues with certain things, but it's good for troubleshooting. Of course, save your changes. Podcast artwork. Now you see we uploaded this artwork here on the getting started, but it didn't put it in both places. So copy it and paste it into the second box. And you can also use for Apple podcast images for each episode. You could turn this on or you don't have to. That's up to you. And there's also going to be a place for you to upload an episodic image. But note, they're not everywhere. And Apple doesn't even use them except for in episode search. But anyway, of course, save your changes. So make sure the same image is in both. At some point, we're going to consolidate that so it's just one. But if you need to upload a new image, you just click Upload Image. There we go. And you navigate to the image, which is this. You hit Open. And then you click Also Uses RSS Image and Save Changes, and that'll automatically put it in both boxes. So save the changes there. Podcast SEO. This used to be really, really important, but it's not so much anymore because all of the apps now kind of do search by themselves. This has nothing to do with Google search or web SEO. This is for within the apps. The only thing I do is I click schema.org. Don't know what it does, but I was told it's a good thing. And if you're doing video, you do video objects. And that's only if you're doing a video podcast, not dropping a YouTube video on a post or something. That's not video podcasting, that's YouTube. But if you're doing an actual MP4 in a feed, then do the video objects. Save changes. And leave all this stuff alone here because, like I said, the apps can all do that themselves, which is good. Basic show. Basic show is absolutely optional, but you can put it in. I happen to be in Traverse City, Michigan, and you can also put in your longitude, latitude if you really want to get fancy, or open source maps locator. This fills out the location tag in the RSS feed, part of Web 2.0 or Web 2.0, podcasting 2.0 namespace. Episode frequency. This again is totally, did I even spell that? Did I spell that wrong? There we go. I guess it's right. Cool. But that fills out the frequency length if you want to have it. But a lot of the apps, again, just notice your pattern and will say daily, monthly, weekly, whatever, bi-weekly, once in a while, inactive. There's a whole bunch of statuses on the apps, but you can throw that in there if you want. Gives them a clue anyway. Donate link. Donate link can be any link that people can use to donate to your show. And it fills out the funding tag in the RSS feed. So you put your URL in there, like Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, Patreon, any of that stuff. And you can put a label on it if you want, like Buy Me a Coffee or Donate to the Show or whatever. And apps that support it, which is not a ton, but some do, apps that support it will show that link right in the podcast app. So save your changes. Rating settings. This is really only important in the United States, as the rest of the world does not have a VCHIP rule. The VCHIP rule is basically you must have a rating on your podcast for any podcasts that show up on set-top boxes in the United States, such as Apple TV, Roku, used to be Boxy, Samsung Smart TV. There's podcast apps on all of those things. And So it's a good idea to put that in there, even if you're not in the United States. And since, don't use any of the TVY unless it's specifically for kids. That throws a whole bunch of other things in the way. So in this case, it's TVG. I don't think I'll cuss during these. Save changes. And Apple settings. Since Apple is still the 800-pound gorilla in podcasting, it's a good idea to have this filled out. So, all right. So what you put in these boxes, subtitle is technically not used anymore, but there might be people on older apps or older computers or whatever that might see this. So just put what you put in the description field on the getting started, or in the description field in the feed settings. And same thing with summary. Now you can put a longer description here. This is specifically what'll show up on Apple Podcasts and some other apps that use Apple Podcasts API. Excuse me. And wrap summary values with CData tags. Leave that off unless you know what it's all about, but for the most part, it's unnecessary, so I leave that off. Optimize iTunes summary from blog posts, which you do kind of automatically, so leave that one off. Category we set in getting started. Only this first one is required. The second two are just hints to the Apple team if they want to manually feature you in another category, which they can do. Author name, you must put a name in here, either the name of your company, if you're doing a company podcast, and it's not, if it's not exactly the same as the title of your show. So I'm going to put my name in here, and don't put title. Well, you can put titles if you're a doctor or something like that, but you know, they really don't want any descriptions in the author tag. That used to be a thing. People would try to do that to game the system. Author email. This is an email that you check. Again, I don't know why it comes up with that one. But it's blubrry.com because I get paid to look at that email. But it does not have to be your Apple ID. It can be any email that you actually check. This is how people will get a hold of you about your podcast, not users, but the directories, stuff like that. Like Apple will send you an email, something goes wrong, you know, and a lot of the other ones will do that as well. But that is required. Explicit tag. When you first come there, it's going to be no option selected. It won't let me go back to that. So I can reset the site. I can't make it say that, but you want to pick either clean or explicit, which we did when on the getting started. But if you didn't do that in getting started, you can just go clean or explicit. Feed type, leave that alone. Unless you really understand what serial is, you're going to be episodic, and that's the default. So just leave that alone. Set iTunes new feed URL. Don't do anything with that unless you're moving from here, not to here. And same thing with these advanced options. Don't click any of these things unless you want to quit podcasting, because it will block you. Hit save changes. And that gets through the feeds section. Now, the next thing is we got to publish an episode. And then I can go through the website tab and destinations for you. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go create a new blog post. And that's where you publish your podcast, is in a blog post. So we're going to click add new. And let's see, I have my cheat sheet over here. So we're going to call this first episode Weaving Your First Basket. So I'm going to paste that in there. And when you do your show, make sure you put at least a couple of sentences in the main body, otherwise known as show notes. Now this does work the same. This is the classic editor. It works exactly the same on the block editor, which is standard, but I like the old old way of doing it. I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So then you've got your podcast recorded, you put your title in, you put your show notes in, you categorize it if you want to. You do not have to categorize to publish. That's only for sorting it out on the website. There is such a thing as category podcasting if you want to do more than one thing, but that's a bit more complicated feature. So get a hold of us and we can help you set that up. And I do have a video, I think, on YouTube on how to do that. But anyway, so media URL. Now, if you are hosting somewhere other than Blubrry, so if you're hosting on one of our competitors or you're self-hosting, which I don't recommend, whatever, you get the MP3 or M4A, or if it's a video, MP4 or M4V link, and you paste that in here. Hit verify and hit publish. But since we're hosting with Blubrry, I'll show you that. So I'm going to hit choose file, and then I'm going to hit upload media file. Now you can drag and drop it if you want, or you can go select the file. And of course, we're going to go to the webinar folder where I have my first episode. And a little bit about naming your episodes. Nobody sees these names other than you. So I tend to make these very, very simple. Just make sure they're different every time, because if you upload the same thing twice, it'll overwrite it on the server. So, but I do it very simple. So mine's UBWP for Underwater Basket Weaving Podcast 001.mp3. Simpler, the better. So you open that and it's going to upload. You can tell our dev was a Star Wars fan. So it's kind of comical. And notice that was really quick because that's a really short file. But your mileage may vary as far as how long it'll take to upload your show. You hit verify. Of course, you get the green box there and a check mark. And that just means everything's cool. Now, at this point, if you want to upload episodic artwork, you can do that here. Upload episode artwork. The artwork should be square and should be, at least 300 pixels by 300, but you experiment with it. But episode info, this is for like the Apple only stuff. If you want a different title on Apple than you want everywhere else, put that there. If you want to number the episodes in Apple, you can do it there. I would recommend not using seasons, because if you start using seasons, you have to keep using seasons. Otherwise, your listing on Apple looks goofy. So I suggest not doing that. But if you know what you're doing and you want to do it every time, perfect. Website display. You can tell it to turn off the player, do not show the links, or whatever. There's a lot of little options here, but you don't have to do any of that. You can just, after you've got the file verified, you just hit publish. Like I said, it works whether you're hosting with us or not. Ignore the red box there. We're experimenting with something and it is kind of weird. So just ignore that. It'll still stay green after you publish. So now that we published a podcast, we do indeed have an RSS feed. So let's see what it looks like on the page. Now you see this is a super, super simple website, but there's our title. There's all our show notes, including links here in the post. There's the player. I don't know why it showed that player, because I thought I had turned that off. Here's what you're going to get if you're either not hosting with us or you haven't changed the player. You're going to get this default player. So let's go back. There's the default player. And notice there's no links under it of any sort. So that's where we go to the website tab. So we're going to go to PowerPress settings, website. So there's a lot of ways to accidentally disable the player. So be a little careful with that. Also, permalinks will be on default. I suggest going to match feed to page category. That way, if you make a page called podcast or a category called podcast, which I don't recommend, but if you do, this will keep the feed working right. And episode box appearance, you can check this box to always have all that extra stuff before you verify, but it'll show up after if you don't check this. And of course, save your changes if you made any changes. Blog posts and pages. This is how the player shows up on the post. So you notice I hit below page contents default. I kind of like to have it up in your face, the top of the post. So if I hit save changes here, and then we go look at the website, you can see now that the player is right below the title. And of course, your theme will determine what this all looks like. This is just a very simple, basic theme. So be aware of that. But we go back to the settings here. You can also disable it here. I don't recommend that, even if you're going to use the shortcode. But if you want to put the shortcode in, it's bracket, PowerPress, bracket. You can see the shortcodes here. It's that. No, this one. This, if you put that in your post, it'll move the player to wherever you put that in your post. But if you forget to put that in there, that's why I say above or below, just so that the player is there no matter what you do. Okay, so display player links in WordPress excerpts. Some themes have just a little excerpt of each post in the blog roll, and then it'll have read more. So you had to click in it to see the whole post. If you want your player and links to be shown in that excerpt, like that. Hide player and links, we don't want to disable. Display player, we don't want to disable, leave that checked. Okay, so display play in new window link, download link, and include file size and duration. What the play a new window link is if somebody comes to your website and they hit play a new window, it'll open up a new small window in their browser so that they can listen and then go navigate around your site or go navigate around the internet. However, download link, I like to have that available in case someone wants to actually download it. Some people still do that. They'll download the MP3 file and then they'll listen to it later in whatever thing they want to listen to it in. And I'd like to include file size and duration because I like to let them know what they're in for. You know, if you're on a limited cell phone plan and you see a file that's, 100 megabytes, well, I don't really want to do that right now. Or you see that it's, an hour and a half long, you want to make sure that, you got time to do that. So I like to, just let them know what they're in for. Embed link. This is if you want people to have the ability to embed your player on their website. You can turn that on or not. That's completely up to you. Subscribe links under the player. If you want to have subscribe links underneath your player, so, subscribe in it, Apple, Google, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, and there's a whole crap load of them. Turn those on. And you can change that label to subscribe. And now it's called follow on a lot of apps. So what I do is I put subscribe or follow and then save my changes. We're going to go back to the website and see what the changes look like. Okay, so now I got my play a new window, my download duration, only 2 minutes, 14 seconds, only 2 megabytes, and the embed. And then I've got subscribe or follow, Google Podcasts, RSS, and more. These two are automatic. I don't know why there's a more there. It shouldn't be there yet, but we'll show you what that is. All right, so whoops, I guess that was my tab. There we go. Subscribe page. So we do have we're going to hit that create a subscribe page. And you don't need to put anything in this link if you don't want to. Otherwise, it'll have a link under the player that'll say more. And you can style it with the modern or the classic, squared or rounded. This is what it kind of looks like. And there'll be a whole stack of them on the page when you have those populated. Go ahead and save your changes. Shortcodes, this just explains all the different shortcodes. We have a shortcode for moving the player within the post. We have another shortcode to put a playlist anywhere on your website. This will not work on anybody else's website, but if you enable podcast playlist player and you put this code on a page on your site, it'll have a list of 10 episodes, the last 10, and you can change that number. There's more information here on this link on what you can add or subtract from the shortcode. Subscribe shortcode does what's on the subscribe page, which I'll show you, but you can create your own subscribe page instead of the one we create. So that's up to you. You can stick that anywhere you want on your website. Skip to, only using the default player or the Blubrry player, you can put these little short codes in to have it skip to a certain spot in your podcast. That's up to you. It only works on your page. It does not work, say, on Apple or any of the other syndication points. And having issues. This is if you do everything right, you didn't accidentally disable the player, you publish an episode, you don't see the player. Well, we have 4 options to try to fix. Just hit please try to fix, save your changes, clear your caching, and see if you see the player. And one of these 4 should fix it. If not, call us or email us and we will take care of it. So save your changes. Anytime you see that button, hit it. I guess that's it. Whoops, I don't want to zoom in. What do we got left here? Play a new window. This just sizes the new window. It's 420 by 240, which is a pretty good size. But you can change that if you want it to be bigger or smaller or whatever. That's completely up to you. All right. A little more on how things look. We're going to go to audio player. And if you are hosting with Blubrry, you can use this player. And note, pretty soon, or maybe if you're watching this later, there'll be a 4th option here. But right now there's only the 3. And you just hit Blubrry player. This is only if you're hosting with us. You can use these 2 players. If you're not hosting, you can use this one and the new one that's coming. If you are hosting on blubrry.com. So then you click activate configure now. You can change these button colors. And once you're happy with that, and you can also use the episodic image in the player if you uploaded one, and you save your changes. Now, if we go back to the website, you see it's the old player, we refresh it, and that's the new player. It has my podcast artwork here. Like I said, you can put episodic images in there as well. So when you publish your episode, if you upload an episode image, it'll show right there. Okay, so now we have a podcast. Oh, and every time you publish, you should hit the play button. Make sure that it plays. And of course, yeah, it's starting to play. I'm not gonna, but you should come to listen to this. So go to underwaterbasketweaving.net when we're done here and play that. I'm pretty proud of it. It's only 2 minutes. All right, so let's go back to the back end. And so we got that. Another appearance thing is widgets. So PowerPress has a widget. So you click on plus here and you type in subscribe. So subscribe to podcast. That puts that widget in there. And of course you can style this again, modern, classic, rounded, horizontal, vertical, podcast types default. If you have a channel, you can add that. If you have a category, but like I said, don't mess with that right now. And then just update it. And then when we go back, we're gonna, and there's our subscribe widget in the widget area. Now, like I said, yours might be over here. Yours might be at the bottom of the page if you have a widget area down there, and all, so on. But that's what it looks like. And you notice there's the Google, because it's pretty automatic. It's not going to work right away for you. It does actually for me, because this has been around a while. Android's automatic. So that just takes you to subscribe on Android. So if somebody's on an Android phone, they can hit that and pick whatever app they want to subscribe in. Email, self-explanatory, subscribe by email. The one thing about subscribe by email is you do not get the list of subscribers. This is a listener function and not a podcaster function. That makes sense. And then of course the RSS feed is just a bunch of gobbledygook, which is what it's supposed to be. And the more, this is the subscribe page we built. And you can edit everything other than what's in this box. And that's that subscribe shortcode. So if we edit this page, you'll see you can edit all this stuff. But that's the shortcode right there that produces that box, which, like I said, if you want to build one yourself, you can do the same thing. And it shows all the same links that the widget does and what's under the player. But that's controlled in the destinations settings in PowerPress, which we'll go to next. So now that we have a podcast, we need to submit it places. So destinations, you'll see there's a whole list of them here. Now we've kind of put them in more or less importance, although I think Spotify is above Google and Podcast Index is above, in my case, above Spotify, but it doesn't matter. This is just happens to be the order we have them in currently. We'll probably reshuffle those at some point, but Apple, of course, being the most important one. You'll notice there's nothing in this box. Leave nothing in this box for right now. And you can also decide where you want the Apple link to show. You can want it to show in the sidebar widget. Do you want it to show in the subscribe page that we built? And do you want it to show in the link under the player? So if you don't want it under the player, but you do want these two, you know, that's what controls this. So click on all of these. There's a link here, either explaining the thing or telling you how to get on Apple Podcasts. We can't submit currently your show for you. That may change in the future, but right now, because if we submit it, then we own it. And we don't want to own your stuff. We want you to own your stuff. But basically, it takes you to a page here that explains what to do, and there'll be a link to sign into Apple. You do need an Apple ID. Where is it? Yeah, click here to submit your podcast. You do need an Apple ID. I'm not going to show you this because they've made it so convoluted now. Well, not really convoluted, but when I partially submit it, it submits it, and I don't really want it there. So that's why I don't show that anymore. But anyway, so all of these are the same. So this one, you know, says how to submit to Google. There's really not a submission to Google. This will be your link to your Google listing when they've found you. But you can also, if you want to give them a little boost, you can hit Podcast Manager right here, and it takes you to Google Podcast Manager. This is, of course, for my Mike Dell's World show. But you can add the feed there, and that just lets them know that it exists and might get it a little faster, but it's still slow. It's just like putting up a brand new web page. It takes a while to get into Google search. Same thing with Google Podcasts. Spotify, if you're hosting with Blubrry, you can click how to submit to Spotify. It gives you a link to the dashboard at Blubrry where you submit it. If you're not hosting with Blubrry, then you need to submit it directly to Spotify yourself by giving them your RSS feed. And if you go up to basic info, again, there's your RSS feed. And all these are kind of the same. Android and email are automatic. All the rest of them have different policies. Just to explain what some of these are, Stitcher and iHeart and Pandora are apps like Spotify. Blubrry directory, I'll show you how to do that. That's easy. GS7 is Indian. Podchaser, it's just a directory. Guyana is another Indian directory. TuneIn's a radio directory. Deezer is kind of a music app in Europe and other places. And this one here, which I'm not even going to try to pronounce, is from the Middle East. I believe, can't for sure say, I think it might be Israel, but it's Middle East. But it doesn't hurt to be everywhere. So just go down the list and when you get time and submit your show. Let me show you a little bit about the advanced tab. The advanced tab is where you would turn on channels or categories. Please do not do these two. Nobody uses them anymore, but if we take them away, the two people that use them will complain, so we can't take them away. We could turn on the playlist player, and that's reflected here. PowerPress Network, that's only if you're a pro hosting customer. JSON uploads. Oh yeah, that's if you're going to use the chapters tag, which we haven't implemented yet, so you can ignore that one. Excuse me. We put the media statistics on the WordPress dashboard, so that's what that means. I don't know why I got a frog today. There we go. All right, down here, the stats prefix. Now, if you're hosting with Blubrry, that will already be in there. But if, say, you want to use any other stat service like PodTrack or there's a bunch of them, Podsites, yeah, there's just a bunch of them. And if you want to add another one, you just click add another one and put the prefix in here that they told you to put in there and hit save changes. Of course, there's a big warning here. We can't guarantee that the service that you're redirecting through is going to be reliable. So just be aware that sometimes it's out of our control. And let's see, I think we got it covered. Let's see, MP3 tags. Now, not a lot of people do ID3 tags, but if you want, we can write them for you, and we'll use your blog post information for the tags. And we'll use your artwork here, but you can also change the artwork or whatever. And that just inserts the tags into the MP3 file if you're uploading to Blubrry. So with that, I think we're done. Of course, if you need to contact Blubrry support, we have an 877 number right here. Hit extension 1 for support. And if it's between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Eastern time in the US, we will answer your call, or you can leave a voicemail and we'll get back to you. Of course, you can go to blubrry.com/support and put in a ticket, and the tickets work a lot better than direct